Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. My name is Matt,
And I'm Eric.
and this week we are trying to survive to see another morning. Although we survived to see this morning, so maybe that's a good sign. We are talking about the horror movie based on a video game, Until Dawn. This one gets the good old PlayStation video game logo before it rolls out. It focuses on a group of 5 people that are on the most disappointing road trip of their lives as they're trying to retrace the steps of our lead character, Clover, who is played by, I think it's Dana Rubin. I'm going to pull it up now. Her sister had disappeared the prior year. The sister, played by Maya Mitchell. It's Ella Rubin, plays Clover. She's with her friends, Max, played by Michael Cimino, Megan, played by Ji Young Yu, and Nina, played by Odessa Ezion, and Nina's boyfriend, Abe, played by Belmont Camelli. They stop at a mysteriously run-down roadside gas station because apparently there is no other kind of roadside gas station in movies like this where
This one was surprisingly well put together, though. This was a very
it looked, I guess,
maintained.
kind of quaint. But they're a creepy as hell clerk played by Peter Stormare, who you might guess appears much later in the film as well. Indicates that the sister might have gone missing at this kind of creepy valley down the road. And well, I would have called the police or done some research. 20 somethings in this movie, in these kind of movies, are dumb and they drive straight to it and end up trapped in a place where you have to survive until dawn, a different kind of horror movie experience every night. Something they learn after all being killed by a just grisly looking masked killer pretty early into the film. And then they restart. There's some threats. There's some danger. I will admit to having not only never played this game, I didn't even know it was a game until you mentioned that in our chat. So I have never played this. I don't know how it relates to a game experience. I'm going to give this a thumbs down.
Okay.
We've seen horror movies, comedies, many things use the kind of Groundhog Day-esque plot device of having to relive a day for something. I actually really like Happy Death Day, which uses the Groundhog Day theme in a horror movie where our heroine has to actually survive and not get murdered by this notorious serial killer in order to free herself. But that one has some blends of humor. Christopher Landon did that one, who recently did Drop. That one has some humor. It has some fun. It has some funny moments. This was pretty joyless and mirthless. There are not any jokes in this at all, unless the joke is that they got me to pay my money to see it on opening night. But it's also, they don't spend any time creating any characters I cared about. They don't really explain anything about how this is happening in the place that they're in. They only loosely explain what happened to the city. They don't really explain what the doctor is doing to any kind of satisfaction, so you know what's going on. And then at the end, it's clear that they're trying to set up a franchise because they have a tag on this that indicates another setup, or at least definitely did for me. And I was like,
spoiler alert for anyone watching this, because I don't care too much about spoiling this movie. Yeah. That's the game, the cabin that it shows on the screens and stuff. And that's why Rami Malek's picture is on the new patient file or whatever it is. It basically teased that this had been a prequel and then the game was going to happen.
So I took it as them trying to set up a future film franchise, and I was like, I'm all the way out, guys. But having that be a nod to the video game fans just makes me feel like I'm back at the Minecraft experience where they say something like chicken jockey and everybody bursts into laughter, and I'm like, it's not that funny, folks. I don't know what you're laughing at. So some of it, video game adaptations, if you're not familiar with the source material, are probably a lot like going to book adaptations or other kind of adaptations. If you don't know the source material and other people do, the hidden things they they pop in there probably
Mm-hmm.
don't mean a lot to you. Sometimes they can stand on their own. This did not stand on its own for me. And if, in fact, if I thought I had to see it Until Dawn 2, this might be an episode where I announce my retirement.
Oh, jeez. And it's just one thumb down, you're sure?
Yeah, I mean, I gave it it wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen, but by the same token, I have no desire to see a franchise of this. If it's
Yeah.
one off, it's just a disappointing experience. I thought it was too long. It felt a little. It got to be a little repetitive. There was only a couple of those ways that they died that I thought were kind of clever. The drinking water one,
Yeah.
where they exploded,
Yeah.
sort of made me laugh, but it was pretty gross. And I honestly, David F. Sandberg directed this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he has done some more somber horror movies. He did Lights Out. He did Annabelle Creation. But the last two theatrical films he did were the Shazam movies, which I actually kind of enjoyed and have a sense of humor.
Oh, not that second one. We reviewed the second one. The first one, yes. The second one was the Taste the Rainbow egregious product placement.
You hated the second one. I didn't like the second one a lot, but I actually think it's mid-tier among DCEU films.
Okay. I like Jack Dylan Grazer's subplot. That was
you would have thought he could have carried over some humor or something into this, and it just did not happen. You thought this movie was funny.
I don't think it was funny. And that's the thing. I'm not gonna like defend the movie. I enjoyed my time at the theater. I'm gonna start by saying that as far as there's a bubble that you have to exist in, where you're like, do you want to see teenagers get killed in a horror movie that's like kind of schlocky? Like, do you want to put on something brainless and enjoy yourself? And in that bubble, I give it a thumbs up. Outside of that bubble, honestly, for the writing alone, I got to give it a thumbs neutral to a thumbs down. But it's just because I get exhausted when people clearly made a movie backwards. They came up with the effects and the idea, and then they wrote generic dialogue and crap to string together what they wanted to look at visually. And it gets really embarrassing, kind of, to the point that there's literally a sequence where they look at Abel, played by Belmont Cameli, his phone, where they're like, we have more cool ideas, but we don't have the budget to string them into more runtime of movie. So let's just look at his phone and show different clips. It's kind of like when they Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice introduced the Justice League in an email. They literally just skip through a couple of different ideas of scary things to go on, and they don't actually happen in the movie. They're just, oh, we could have done more, so let's just stick them together on like make the guy look at his phone and find that he has clips of him. It's really lazy, crappy, like I wonder what he wants. What do you mean? Like just really, really bad dialogue. And
really bad.
And it was kind of like annoying to get through. But in the end, one of the things I think they did successfully, whether they were trying to or not, is like another matter. Is I did think that for me, they made most of the characters a little likable. I like the one who like kills the other one at one point because she refuses to leave her friends. That's a strong like character defining choice and whatnot. I liked Megan Ji Young Yu's character. She felt like vulnerable and she felt kind of like brushed away the most, but her little thing about being sensitive to all of the issues that are going on, she felt like a punching bag, and so I kind of felt bad for her. And then the Max, Michael Camino, his care for Clover is at least a little bit endearing. But
they do try to build a little bit the bond between the sisters, but that scene so far.
That scene is also so badly written. Like you know, I'm not running away from something. I'm running towards something. So that 5 minutes later in the movie, she can say, we got to stop running away from something and start running towards something. And it makes me want to pull my teeth out. Like but the point is, I think they made the characters just likable enough, but just vulnerable enough that any of them could have died, that there were legitimate stakes instead of feeling like only the lead character had plot armor to me. I felt like it was completely possible that any one of them was going to die, and that kind of made the ending a really thrilling uptick. And so as far as, you know, even though I kind of technically just spoiled by saying could have, you know, like anyone who watched this has really no reason to go see the movie anymore. But you know, I definitely enjoyed my time at the theater, but the thing is it is kind of an indefensibly like not good movie, except for the like everything beyond the writing, like the craft of it, like the performances couldn't save the writing, but the actual set design and gore and things like that, like I do think it is definitely worth a look. And also it was really clever for them to do what they did. This is what they did with the game. Until Dawn I put Uncharted up here for a very specific reason. Uncharted was a video game made to play like a movie. So when they made a movie of it, all they did was just strip away the interactive element of the game, and everyone's asking, what's the point? Well, with Until Dawn, you're at this like ski lodge. Mm-hmm. And you play Hayden Panettiere and Rami Malek and a couple of different characters, and essentially you find out about Dr. Hill and his experiments, and you find out like about what's going on as you play through a movie, making choices that cause you to kill people or die, or, you know, all kinds of different things can happen. But the thing is, when you branch down one path, the way that you play the game is you're like, oh man, I didn't really like what I said to that person. Let me reload my save file and say something different. Oh, I didn't really like that I died after I made that choice. Let me reload my save file and make sure I can make it through and try and make it to the end with like the most survivors possible. So it's not the point of the game. You're supposed to play the game through just like a horror movie, and if everybody dies, everybody dies. But the way everyone plays the game is by Groundhog Day resetting and doing something different, and then something different happens. So I think it was kind of like a small stroke of genius that was wasted to adapt this in this way, that it has this branching network where it's not just Groundhog's Day where it's just the exact same thing every time, but they discover something new every time. And they're like trying to web their way forward. I just wish that this had been an entirely different kind of like structure for a movie, where we did actually see 13 nights of them doing one genre and then finding a way to beat it, and then another genre and finding a way to beat it. And I know that probably would have gotten grinding and repetitive too, but just like, I don't know, that just seems more fun to me than skipping all but 4 nights and looking at the things on a phone and just like kind of, I don't know. Like, is that,
well, you do fight time, you know, like the best movies in this try to keep it close to 90 minutes. This isn't too bad. It's an hour and 43 minutes, but I thought it still felt kind of long at times. So do you think it did capture the game well, or?
I think it managed to capture something that movies only fail to do with video game adaptations, which is a movie can only strip away your ability to play the game. But this did a good job of simulating playing the game, like watching someone play the game. Like it somehow escaped that vibe of Uncharted, where it's like, okay, if I'm going to watch another Indiana Jones movie, why the whole point of those games is it's Indiana Jones, but you can actually be Indiana Jones and play it. So why do I want to go watch knockoff Indiana Jones, you know, when I can't do anything about it? And it's just, that's what it is.
I
And I liked
actually
Uncharted. I don't mean
liked
to just
Uncharted.
I don't mean to bash on it. Like it's
But I've heard it's not a good. That's another game I obviously never played. I've heard it's not a good adaptation of the
well,
experience of the game.
but well, that's the thing. That's the good wording of it, is the experience of the game. Because you can't, like, even though it does do 1-to-1, it does several set pieces from the third and fourth games, you can't play it. And in Until Dawn, for lack of a better way to phrase it, when you're watching the movie, you sort of get to play. And I don't know.
I mean, I think that is always going to be a little bit of a, because the video game experience is so interactive. It's always going to be a little bit difficult to try to bring that onto screen in its own way. And we've seen I always think a lot of times the video game adaptations that seem to be the most successful in films are ones that are maybe aimed at younger audiences. Like you look at the Sonic movie or Minecraft, where they throw in enough Easter eggs from the game that it makes it fun. Uncharted, if I didn't know that it was based on a game, I probably never would have even thought about it as a video game. And I think that's been some of the struggles. We've seen Tomb Raider adapted a couple of times, and I've never played the game, but I've had, and I've enjoyed the films for what they are. I think Mortal Kombat, I remember playing old versions of that, in arcades, because that's more our generation. The live action Super Mario Brothers was also an atrocious movie, but didn't really capture the game. I think it's hard when they're bringing these games to life, because the experience of playing a video game, especially a long form video game, is usually so different. I never played Resident Evil, but I kind of enjoyed those movies, and I've heard people say those are closer to capturing some of the experience of the games. No, you didn't think they were either?
The first movie is kind of tonally like one of the games. The second movie still keeps to some of the creatures, and then sporadically throughout the franchise, they happen to have some of the same characters. But no.
Didn't they they remade it too?
They did. There was a Netflix...
They made a new one that was, I thought as a movie was like much worse, but
yeah. Yeah, I didn't see that one. But they're rebooting it again, so yeah, we'll see what happens.
I think they're making a sequel to the one that he just did, but I don't know. That was not. I almost forgot.
I've played Resident Evil 4, and I think I've played the first one somehow a while ago, but I like those games, but I'm not like, it's not like I've played every Uncharted game, and I've played through Until Dawn and another like sequel sort of game called The Quarry, which is like really good, and like these are the ones that I'm avid for. Tomb Raider, sure.
Yeah. So okay. Well, what did you give this one?
I cheated. I gave it a thumbs up in a little bubble where people want to actually watch like a schlocky horror movie and escape things. And then like in reality, because they can't escape the writing, it's like, yeah, I'm going to go with thumbs neutral, because the film making on top of the filmmaking was like a thumb up. The writing was like almost 2 thumbs down. So I'm giving it a generous neutral.
That's interesting. You think the filmmaking was good?
I did. Trying to adapt the concept, the special effects. I mean, it would be so easy to do a lot of just like CGI garbage, and like I'm not usually that big on things for gore's sake, but I do appreciate when a dude gets stabbed in the eye and his eye like slips off onto the piece of wood. Like, takes a lot of thought and attention to detail that probably should have been put into the script, but whatever.
That's true. It was somewhat deeply unsettling. So, speaking of somewhat deeply unsettling, Daredevil may be over, but interesting shows are not. And this being a theme of adaptations from a video game, we have HBO's Last of Us, which had a first season that came out, I believe, in 2022. So we had quite a layoff before getting season 2, which debuted 2 weeks ago. They had their second episode last Sunday night, and it wasn't a happy episode for all the characters. I will say this is also a game I never played. To me, the first season felt a lot like a poor man's Walking Dead. Not my favorite show. Didn't end up in my top 10 of the year. Definitely won't end up in my top 10 of the year again this year. I watch it, but I never totally invested in the characters, which probably means if you have not seen episode 2 of this season of Last of Us, you may want to tune out for a little bit here, because it'll really be impossible to talk about it without spoilers, and we're probably not even going to try. So that's just a fair warning. If you have not seen this season, you may want to just bookmark this one, come back to it. But pretty huge episode. People who had played the game, I assume, knew what was coming. I wasn't shocked, but did not realize what was going to happen this week, in that one of our main characters, Pedro Pascal, was freed from his HBO contract. His watch has ended. Not the first major HBO show where he has been killed off in a somewhat gruesome and brutal fashion. And it's something he talked about a little bit in post-episode interviews. I also happened to see the post of his interview before I got to watch the episode, so that probably also sucked some of the drama out of the end for me. But Caitlin Dever, a pretty famous actress who came on to play the part of Abby. I think they said she's only a guest star this season, so she is only appearing in 3 episodes. She's been in the first 2, so I guess we're not going to see her again until the finale. Only a 7-episode season for season 2. They have already been renewed for a 3rd season. I assume there's more than 2 games.
No,
there's
just
only
2.
2.
Yep.
Interesting. So, and they're, from what I understood, the first season covers what happens in the first game, and this season has picked up for the second game. So I'm guessing they're going to play that out over a little bit of a longer period.
Yep.
How have you felt? It seems like you're a lot more invested in this. Did you play Last of Us as a game?
I have played all the way through The Last of Us, the first one, and I have played none of The Last of Us Part 2. And I adored the first season of the show, although I did have some significant problems with the way, like, the gameplay obviously continues to have you engaging and interacting with zombies. But after this tonal shift happens, where in the game you start to play, your controller changes. You've been so used to playing Joel like it's his story. It transitions you to kind of relearn how to play the game as Ellie, as she learns how to kind of take care of and protect herself. And you'll know this in the show, if you remember, as the point in the game where Joel gets really sick and she goes out on her own to try to get medicine for him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the thing about The Last of Us is that it is probably one of the most incredible, like, human stories told in a video game format. And to transition that to a TV show, you're going to have something similar to when you take Uncharted, which is doing something remarkable for making you play through a movie and just turn it into a movie. It's not as interactive, but it is still an incredibly impactful, to me, story about this relationship between Joel and Ellie. And it looks like this season is going to be more about Ellie's revenge on Joel.
On
And
Abby.
Ellie's revenge. Like Abby's revenge is over. She's
Ellie's revenge for Joel and
yeah.
on Joel.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I've heard now you said you hadn't played the second game. One of the things they said is in the second game you start out having to play from Abby's point of view and you have to murder Joel.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
So that's interesting.
The gameplay makes you question your moral judgments. Like as Joel in the game, you have to choose to kill the innocent people who are going to experiment on Ellie and protect her. Or you can choose to like end the game and like, you know, you just don't play anymore because you refuse to do morally what he will do. And it's I don't know, it's just super heartfelt. It's a really great story, but like I don't know. To me, the thing was that the opening to this season was, I thought, great, and did a great job of exploring like how people living. This is the thing to me that a show like The Walking Dead never did, or at least I never heard did to make me come back after season 5. I took a really long swing. I went all the way through season 5 of The Walking Dead before I gave up because I was so annoyed that it was the same thing over and over again and it was like repetitive. In this one, they have actually established some sort of living colony or community, and you're actually seeing them in a post-zombie apocalypse world looking at what running a new world would look like really well established. You got therapists, you've got schools, you've got like a really a life thriving. And then in episode 2, this is really disappointing because it's not in the game. They just decide to make it a battle of the ice wall from Game of Thrones, just all out apocalyptic battle with a bunch of zombies that apparently in one winter season all got frozen in the snow. There was like a whole army of them apparently.
Well, so they talked about that they had a few smarter ones who were using who were using either their dead ones or expendable ones as shelter to keep them warm.
I know.
That's why they were buried. Well, they referenced it a couple of times, but yeah, I don't know if that was a creation of the show. Somebody said that was that the attack on Jackson comes much later in the game, and they just moved it up.
Well, there's multiple attacks supposedly on Jackson. I mean, that's what they say in the making of this episode. But they said they wanted the chance to see one of the attacks that you had been hearing about in the game. And I just think it was like an overbloated, it felt like a season finale kind of thing. And it felt like you're destroying everything that they had built just to be dramatic about it. It didn't feel like it had a purpose. I was way more invested in what's happening because like the story is not fight and survive the zombies. The story is how far will someone push their morality in this post-apocalyptic scenario to save their daughter, to save their family, to get revenge.
I mean, and that's a typical thing in the genre. I always said the Walking Dead, people talk about it being a zombie show, but it was really always about the biggest threat to the survival of humanity is other people. What happens to people when society collapses? What happens to groups of people when you don't have those groupthink or moral structures or government structures, or there are no consequences? That was more of what I was always fascinated about with The Walking Dead, and I just have never quite gotten there with The Last of Us, you know. And you know, Abby's bent on revenge because her father was an innocent who got killed. Does she know that they were about to basically sacrifice a little girl because they thought that that her genes could hold the cure? I mean, I wouldn't say
that one more time.
they were about to sacrifice Ellie because
Yeah.
they thought her genes held the cure to.
Right, but you said, does she know that?
Does Abby know that? That we get no indication that she knows what they were doing in that room.
No, she does, because she was a Firefly. She was a part of the team of people. And at the beginning of the episode, of episode 1, she says, they're talking about how Joel left. She's like, Joel was supposed to be with someone who was, and then the guy cuts her off. He's like, don't even say it. And she's about to say that Ellie was immune. And like she and it was her father was the guy that the scientist that got shot that was working on it. I don't think it's a stretch to think that she would know. Like maybe she doesn't know why, because if she knew why, she would be aiming to out Joel and find Ellie and find a doctor and find a way to do all this stuff. But she definitely knew enough to know that her family was innocent. Joel is a monster in this scenario.
Yeah, I'm sure now the rest of this is going to be about her about Ellie recovering, training, and then going to where are they? Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So at least there'll be a warmer climate, to do whatever murder or activity comes up. It's interesting to me, obviously they probably Pedro Pascal has a much bigger profile now than probably when he started this show, with all the movies and things that he's going to be in. He was at the premiere for Thunderbolts. I'm wondering if the Fantastic Four appear somewhere in a credit sequence for Thunderbolts, but obviously that kind of is coming up. Mandalorian and Grogu comes out a year from now, next summer. I remain pretty excited about that. I really liked Bella Ramsey a lot when she was on Game of Thrones as well. I thought she was one of like the dynamite hidden gems on there. I have not warmed up at all to her character in this, who has felt really one note to me. And I feel like we're continuing on a one note journey that sort of makes me less interested, if that's even possible. I was kind of lukewarm on season 1.
And this just seems like it's
I've been continuously lukewarm. The production is there. I love how they put things together. HBO knows how to make a Sunday night primetime show. I mean, that's one of the reasons I watched White Lotus all the way through, even though I was pretty lukewarm on caring about anything that was happening narratively. I just have never connected with this. There was points in The Walking Dead where I really connected with characters, and where you had character moments and deaths that hit so hard that, like I had to sit in the quiet for a little while and reflect. And I feel like the end of this episode was supposed to be one of those moments. And I was like, okay, well, that happened. And it's really, I don't know what it is. I just have not connected. And I don't think it's entirely because I didn't play the game, because there have been things where, I never read the Walking Dead comics or graphic novels that it was based on, but I managed to connect to characters. And when you had a couple of those people die, I mean, like I was shook when Rick's son died in Walking Dead, for example. Like I like, but even earlier up, I feel like there were ones in the end of the first season or in the second season. I remember when Melissa McBride's character, Carol's daughter, comes out of the barn at the end of season 2. That was like a devastating emotional moment.
Yes.
There had been some character building and some stakes. And I don't know if it's just, I don't know if they do kind of a 5-year jump here, and would I have wondered to myself, would they have been better served if Joel's death had come like after the 3rd or 4th episode? Because they really have next to no scenes together in the first episode, and they're not together at all. She stumbles into his death in the second episode, and they seem to be at odds.
No, she's definitely going to carry the weight of having
And
walked
maybe
away
that
from
will
that
end up
relationship.
being effective. It's just
Yeah.
I read so many people that compared this episode to like the Red Wedding and the emotional devastation, and I didn't even come close to that.
Mm. I
And
mean, that
it
my
was weird.
problem is that I think everyone and their grandmother knew that it was coming. I
Well,
don't know why.
I didn't know it was coming until I saw the headline on Sunday night.
That's fine. That's fine. But just like in a world where the internet exists, I think it is so easy for a mass of people to know that the big thing about the second game is that you play as Ellie because Joel was killed. Like it's I the thing is, I don't think this was trying to be shocking for the sake of being shocking. I think this is still being honest to the emotions that it's earning from what happens in the story. And I mean, that's something that is true to me through most of Game of Thrones, but to me is largely missing from The Walking Dead. I can't speak to the seasons I haven't seen, so I can't speak to the death of Carl.
Well,
But like for me, it was by the last episode that I watched was when Negan was introduced and was walking around with a baseball bat picking who was gonna die. And there was just it was literally just the tension of that moment was here are some new guys that want to kill humans. So we don't know who they are. We don't know anything. We just know that there's going to be a shocking death. It's going to be shocking for the sake of shocking. And I looked up who it was. I waited till the premiere of the next season to look up who it was. I was like, okay, it's Glenn. Fine. I don't, like I'm supposed to suddenly then care that they want revenge on Glenn so that everybody just wants to kill each other over and over and over again. Like we can maybe make a
yeah.
settlement. No, we can't. We want to fight each other to the death. Okay, well,
And
let's go from the prison to the governor.
that actually ends up I will say they transitioned to a lot of big bad humans in human form, and some worked better for me than others. But that arc in the wake of Glenn's death is actually the way they work through it, and then what Carl advocates to his father and the way that works through him over the course of a couple of seasons ends up something beautiful. Like they actually start a season with an episode titled Wrath, which is after Carl's death, and it seems like all Rick is going to do is go and get Negan, and that's all he's going to care about. But the lessons he takes from his son and the way that works on him, the finale of that episode is called Mercy. And when he finally confronts him, he says, I find my mercy overcomes my wrath. And it leads to such a beautiful arc. And maybe that's where we're going in Last of Us, to something beautiful, emotional, and cathartic, where at some point someone stands up and says the endless cycle of revenge and killing has to end if we're ever going to become something more as a society, which would be something beautiful we actually don't see in reality, unfortunately. And that was, to me, that was what made that entire arc payoff. And I'm not saying there weren't some nadir points along that way. I would not call Walking Dead a perfect show by any means, but there was always this sense to me. I have long felt that The Walking Dead, the world of The Walking Dead itself, was a metaphor for purgatory, because it certainly seemed like to be freed from that world was a greater relief than to be trying to live and survive in the world that had been created. And you consistently saw throughout most of the seasons that when people got to this point of like internal realization or some kind of spiritual awakening moment or peace, their character died.
Yeah.
Which I used to take as getting to a point of spiritual enlightenment isn't the way to go. But the longer I watched the show, I started to think maybe what they are trying to tell you is that's like your release, if you thought of it as a metaphor. and maybe I read more into it than they intended, but
no, but
there were always
that's significant.
There were always things that pulled me in and made me think. For a long time, it was a show I thought about, what I was watching and the themes and stuff they were putting in, and I tend to do, to want to get drawn in and to get pulled out of shows. When we were talking about Daredevil Born Again and Daredevil, I've always enjoyed the tension within him, his Catholic faith and the violence that he returns to the world. And, we've seen some internal struggle. That's always been compelling. Last of Us, probably their most emotionally resonant episode was the bottle episode from season 1 with Nick Offerman, which doesn't have a lot to do with the ongoing story, and therein lies some of my tension and struggle. And that's why when you get to an episode like Sunday Night, I know that was supposed to, I think that was supposed to be a big moment, whether you knew it was coming or not. People talking about what a blow that was, what an emotional loss that was, and I haven't gotten there.
Yeah,
and this is episode 11 so far. It just be curious to see where they go, and if it's just a quest for vengeance from this point forward and leading to another big kill sequence at the end. Again, having not played the game, I'm sure people already know where it's going, but
yeah. I'm not going to play the game. There are a lot of mixed reviews on the game. I'm not gonna have the time. Maybe I would if I'd had the time, but I am excited to not know what is gonna happen. But the thing is, I don't know how you can get any more climactic or higher stakes than you got with this episode.
Well, and it should have mattered a lot, because they tried to create that father daughter, and some of the scenes in the first season that did work the most for me was Joel's flashback and memory to the child he couldn't save.
Yep.
When the world went to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Which gives you the understanding and the reason why he's fighting so hard to protect her. It just, I just do wonder, you didn't get enough or really much of any time of them together in the season before he's gone.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right. Maybe that'll be the impetus for it haunting her, and that will make it more haunting. But there are very few characters that die in this episode, so I guess I am kind of invested in him, but we'll have to see where they're going to go.
Yep. That's cool. So do you have a card for this week?
Yes, I do. Where is my... And I'm proud of this one, because I think this is going to be a harder one for you, hopefully. All right. Explain a movie poorly. A citywide scavenger hunt leads to an orgy. So while you think on that, I will toss out another movie that's in theaters this week that I saw. If you ever wondered what it would be like if A24 made a children's movie with Willem Dafoe, you're in luck. It's called The Legend of Ochi. And I will say the best thing about it for me is, as you can see in the image here, the little baby Ochi, which was so cute. I wanted one. I wanted to bring one home. I wasn't even put off by the fact that if it bites you, it could give you some kind of serious infection. It is cute at times. It was fascinating at times. It's definitely, A24 trying to do something family friendly. This is a PG movie. Emily Watson, Finn Wolfhard, and Willem Dafoe in the cast with Helena Zengel, who is pictured there kind of in the lead. Willem Dafoe, one of the weirdest characters I think I've ever seen from him, which is really saying something. I know I've done well with the card because I can see you
no, that
struggling to work it out. But Willem Dafoe, just one of the weirdest characters, Emily Watson. The whole thing is like a weird, quirky world. And that's where it lost me a little bit. It was a little too weird. For me, I thought the creatures were adorable. It's, you know, a basic story about a baby creature getting injured and separated from its family, and a young girl deciding that she wants to return it. And, you know, it's going to have a certain amount of charm. It is interesting to see an A24. You know, they usually do some edgy, some more experimental things. You know, some other A24 releases we've gotten this year include Warfare, which came out, which is a great movie, but a decidedly more adult movie. You know, A24 did Civil War. They've done a lot of different kind of films. So it was interesting to see them weighed in here. I liked it for what it is. It didn't quite work for me, but again, the creature was so delightful, and it was so cute that I think I gave it an extra half a star because I wanted to adopt one. So also out this week is The Accountant 2. I'm going to see that later this weekend, so you can look for a review on the site. I really enjoyed the first one, and you had me at John Bernthal and Ben Affleck shooting things up. So a citywide scavenger hunt leads to an orgy. Your hint is with masks. This movie is not from this century.
So I'm gonna guess here that they're not meaning orgy of violence, because I'm thinking of movies like Heat or The Town.
They mean a decidedly sexual orgy. Having seen this movie,
is it Eyes Wide Shut?
It is Eyes Wide Shut. What an incredible pull!
What is the scavenger hunt aspect of it? That's the only.
I don't remember. Yeah, I think Tom Cruise has to go collect some things from around.
Maybe he's certainly walking around the city streets a lot.
That was never one of my favorite movies, so I don't. You know, I think it's most notable because of the orgies.
Yeah,
that were in it, and because it was like Stanley Kubrick doing an NC-17.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you do remain undefeated, even though that I thought that was a hard one.
That really honestly was a hard one. I was going like, is it like John Wick Chapter 3 because he's like being hunted all over the world, and then it's like an outline.
Well, yeah, like, you went a different way with orgy. Yeah, they meant orgy in the traditional sense.
Yeah, which made me think of Sausage Party, the Seth Rogen like one like that. But I was like, there's no scavenger hunt city.
True,
yeah, but I don't know.
That was a good one. This one was a sausage party in its own way.
Yeah. Oh, good gosh.
Yeah, good old Stanley Kubrick. The one that I just pulled though will be good for next week. It's pretty funny too.
Okay.
Next week, you know what? The end of April is upon us, which means we are rounding into summer movie season. Next week, we get our first big summer blockbuster, which is also our first big hope for the MCU this summer in Thunderbolts. I am super pumped. My birthday is May 4th, so it is always a birthday weekend movie to kick off summer. There have been some good ones. There have been some less good ones. I have high hopes going to see this on my to kick off my birthday weekend with my wife. So we will be talking about that next Saturday morning. And then Eric and I will also lift up a few movies coming out during this blockbuster season between first weekend of May and Labor Day that we are excited to see. There are some huge tentpoles this year that a lot of studios have high hopes for and a lot of fans have high hopes for. So hopefully that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anything you want to shout out before we head out of here?
Again, I feel like I watched something and I'm missing it. Oh well.
It left a strong impression. As strong an impression apparently as Willem Dafoe in Legend of Moji. He has played some weird characters, but this is definitely up there in the rankings.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
honestly,
he goes for it. So that'll do it for us this week. Last of Us airs Sunday nights on HBO. We will keep checking in with that. Both going to stick with it. Curious to see where it goes. 5 more episodes this season, and then as you might expect, at some point during the summer, probably when it wraps up, we'll check in on Andor, which started its second season this week, second and final season, which covers the events leading up to Rogue One, following Cassian Andor. So a lot of people have said best Star Wars television series yet. That's another one, much like Last of Us, that was critically acclaimed for a first season that I watched the whole thing of and thought was just okay. So this is the time where I'm getting laid out here for
I haven't seen it, but Star Wars does have this skewed thing where the fan base talks about everything like it's great, and then when something actually good comes along, it becomes a monumental achievement.
Well,
and if you scale everything down,
typically Star Wars lovers that seem to really like this. Tony Gilroy, who gave us Michael Clayton and has done some excellent films, has done Andor and has done something different with it. I am curious that Disney Plus, while they've promoted the crap out of it, has such a weird chunked release schedule, because Andor is going to be I think it's 10 episodes over 4 weeks. They released 3 this week, which is why I haven't finished all of them, because that was a commitment that I wanted to watch in a block. And the NFL draft is this week, and if those of you that know me know that I definitely cover a lot of football. So the last couple of nights I have been doing a lot of that. But Andor is actually, I was wrong. It is a 12 episode season that is being released in 4 weeks, because it's 3 this week, 3 next week, 3 May 6th, 3 May 13th. So probably, a little bit later into May, once the whole thing is out, we will have a discussion. So you can look forward to that, because Eric and I do enjoy these fandom TV shows, and it's been fun mixing them in. So I think it'll be a fun addition, to what we're doing. But next week, summer movie preview. See what happens on Last of Us. Might be worth a check-in, like we were doing with Daredevil. And we will definitely be talking Thunderbolts. I have my fingers crossed, because Thunderbolts, of the 3 MCU movies being released this year, Thunderbolts was the one I was most excited for. Wow. So it could be the most crushing for me. We will know, if you hear a loud, mournful wail midday on Friday, you'll know that was me having seen Thunderbolts. All the people that compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy in the run up to it have done little to suppress my enthusiasm for the project. So I hope it pans out, but we will know next week. And until then, hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you at the movies.